Hello, everyone. Today we're going to tackle a really big question. How do you measure something as huge as a country's entire economy? It sounds very complex, doesn't it? But don't worry. We're going to understand this big idea by starting with something very small and simple.
So, you hear these big numbers on the news all the time, right? India's economy is now $3 trillion, $4 trillion. But if you ever stop to wonder where that number actually comes from, how on earth do they calculate the value of everything a country like ours produces in one whole year?
Okay, so here's the first problem we face. Imagine a country produces cotton, and it also produces computers. How do you add them up? You can't just say 100 kilos of cotton plus 10 computers equals what? It doesn't make any sense, right? It's like trying to add apples and oranges, but on a massive national scale.
So, how do economists solve this problem? Well, it's actually quite simple. They use a common language that everything understands: money. Instead of adding up the number of things, we add up their value in rupees. For example, if we have cotton worth 1 lakh rupees and computers worth 10 lakh rupees, we can add those values. Suddenly, it makes perfect sense. Now, to make this idea crystal clear, we're going to follow the story of a simple packet of biscuits. Pay close attention, because this little story holds the key to understanding how we measure the entire economy.
All right, so our story begins with the farmer. The farmer is part of what we call the primary sector. This involves anything that comes from nature, like agriculture. Now, this farmer grows wheat and sells it to a flour mill for, let's say, 20 rupees per kilogram. So, at this first step, 20 rupees of value has been produced.
Now, this is a very important term for your exams. The wheat that the farmer sold, is it the final product? No, we don't buy raw wheat to eat. It's going to be used to make something else. So economists call this an intermediate good. An intermediate good is something that is used as an ingredient to produce a final product. Remember that.
Okay, step 2. The wheat goes from the farm to a flour mill. This is the secondary sector, the manufacturing or industrial sector. The mill does its job. It grinds the wheat into flour, and now it sells this flour to a biscuit company for 25 rupees. Now, did you notice something? The value went up. It was 20 rupees, now it's 25. The mill has added value of 5 rupees by turning wheat into flour.
And now for the final step. The biscuits company buys the flour, they mix it with sugar, bake it, put it in nice packaging, and they sell the packet of biscuits to you and me, the consumers, for 80 rupees.
So, these biscuits that we buy from the shop, these are what we call final goods. Why? Because this is the end of the journey. We are going to consume them. They're not going to be used to make something else. So wheat was the intermediate good, and the biscuits are the final good. See the difference? Okay, now for the most important question of all. To find the total value produced in this entire chain, what should we do? Should we add up everything? 20 for the wheat, plus 25 for the flour, plus 80 for the biscuits? Huh? No, we should not. The correct value is just 80 rupees. Think about it. That 80 rupees you pay for the biscuits already includes the value of the flour, which in turn includes the value of the wheat. If we add them all up, we'd be counting the value of the wheat multiple times. This is a big mistake called double counting, and we must always avoid. So this brings us to the golden rule for measuring an economy. Remember this very carefully. We only count the value of final goods and services. And this simple rule is the foundation for the biggest term in economics, GDP.
All right, get your notebooks ready. Here is the formal definition. Gross domestic product, or GDP, is the value of all final goods and services produced within a country during a particular year. Each part of that definition is important. In simple terms, GDP tells us how big a country's economy is.
Okay, so we now know what GDP is and how it's calculated. But the story doesn't end there. Let's look at something else. How does the structure of an economy, the mix of agriculture, industry, and services, change as a country develops? It's a very interesting historical pattern.
Historically, if you look at any developed country today, you'll see they all went through a similar journey. In stage 1, their economy was mostly based on the primary sector. That means agriculture. Then, in stage 2, as factories came up, the secondary or industrial sector became the most important. And finally, in stage 3, as they became fully developed, the tertiary or service sector took over.
So that's the general pattern. But what about India? Has our country followed the same path? Let's look at the data for India's economy.
Now look carefully at this graph. It compares India's economy over 40 years. Each color represents a sector. You can see that all three sectors have grown, which is good. But just look at the blue bar, the tertiary or service sector. Can you see how much it has grown? The growth is massive, much more than the other two.
This chart makes it even clearer. It shows the share of each sector, like slices of a pie. You can see that the service sector is the biggest slice. It makes up more than half of our entire economy. This is a huge change from 40 years ago, when the agriculture sector was the biggest slice.
So the big question is, why has India's service sector grown so much? There are 4 main reasons you should know. First, the demand for basic services like schools and hospitals has gone up. Second, as our farms and factories grow, they need more support services like transport and banking. Third, as people's incomes rise, they spend more money on things like tourism and eating out. And fourth, and this is a big one, the growth of information and communication technology has been huge.
Just think about it for a moment. Ask your parents. When they were your age, did they have things like online food delivery apps or online shopping? Probably not. These are all new services that are part of this big change, and they have completely changed how we live.
Now, there's one very important point to remember. When we say service sector, we often think of high-paying jobs and big IT companies. And yes, those are part of it. But the service sector also includes many people with very small incomes, like your local shopkeeper, a repair person, or a transport worker. So while the sector is growing, not everyone in it is earning a lot of money.
Okay, everyone, we've covered a lot today, so let's quickly revise the most important terms. These are the definitions you absolutely must know for your exams.
Let's go through them one by one. First, GDP, the value of all final goods and services produced in a country in a year. Second, final goods, the goods sold to the final consumer, like our biscuits. Third, intermediate goods, goods used to produce final goods, like the wheat and flour. Then the 3 sectors: primary sector, agriculture and related activities; secondary sector, manufacturing and industry; and tertiary sector, the service sector.
So we've learned how to measure the economy and seeing how India's service sector is booming. But this leaves us with a big question to think about. Is this fast-growing service sector creating enough good jobs for all the young people in our country? This is one of the most important challenges for India's future. It's something for you to think about as you study more about our economy. Thank you.